Thank you everyone for your time and presence. It is our privilege to have you all join today. My name is Zishan. I take care of digital marketing at Utunga. We welcome everyone to the webinar Understanding EtherCAT based device development. In today's webinar, we'll share information on EtherCAT protocol and its slave implementation. We'll also discuss on prerequisites for certification of EtherCAT devices. Before we get started, I would like to take a couple of minutes to introduce Utunga. We are a product engineering and industrial solutions company. For over 13 years, we have partnered closely with industrial OEMs to build products and solutions from concept all the way through the lifecycle of the product. Our engineers have added digital layers to mechanical, non-digital field devices, built configuration and calibration software, highly sophisticated data integration, visualization and analytics solutions, provided consultation and services on industrial security and quality engineering. We offer services in application development, embedded services, IIoT, verification and validation. Our services are targeted to OEMs and end industries in process, factory, and power domain. We follow a strict and secure development lifecycle for all our projects. Next slide. These are the few industrial consortium we closely work with on connectivity and protocols. Industrial connectivity is a foundation for Industry 4.0, and that's how we started as a company about 13 years ago. That is connecting field devices and assets to hardware and software system up in the value chain. Our association with this consortium is rooted in our commitment to help our customers build interoperable industrial systems. Next slide. With that, I would like to introduce the speakers for today. Navneeta is a senior embedded design engineer with 3+ years of hands-on experience on product development lifecycle. She's an expert on various embedded communication protocols, including their stack development, implementation, and porting. Hema Priya is the second speaker of today, and she's an experienced embedded design engineer with 3+ of years of experience with working on various protocol stacks. Her expertise are in porting to various controllers, simulator development, and pre-certification testing for devices. Just a quick housekeeping points before we get started. The duration of the webinar is 60 minutes. We will utilize the last 10 minutes for Q&A segment. Please send in your questions using the Q&A icon on your left-hand side of your screen. The presentations, slides, and the link of the webinar recording will be emailed to you post the webinar. Request you to click on the full screen icon on your left-hand side of your screen to get the good view of slides. Before I hand it over to Navneeta, a quick poll for 30 seconds. I request the attendees to please select your answers. Thank you for your answers. So the question was, are you aware of the requirements for developing an EtherCAT slave device and getting it certified? So majority of people are not aware of it. Thank you so much for the answer. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Navneeta, the respective session.
Thank you, Dishan. Hi all, welcome to this webinar. Next slide. So in this webinar, we are going to cover what is Ethernet and how the EtherCAT protocol is derived from the Ethernet and history of EtherCAT. So where and all the EtherCAT is used and in-depth working of EtherCAT protocol. And also the slave device, how it can be developed or integrated. So, and after that, how the slave device can be tested and certified to go at ETG. Next slide. So here comes your Ethernet. Basically, EtherCAT is what Ethernet for Control Automation Protocol. So it has a Ethernet layer over that. So Ethernet is a communication standard that was developed in early 80s. So it was developed over local area network so that they can create, store, and share the information with others in the location. So it was standardized in IEEE 802.3 standard by the Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers. So what is this standard will give you overview is it defines about the physical and data link layer and application layer of OSI layer. So what does this physical layer will do exactly? This physical layer will communicates between a master and a slave by using a coaxial cables or twisted pair cables or fiber optic cabling. So data link layer will forms your packets of that using the physical layer network, and then it processes the enter frame to the application layer. So in the left side of that image, you can see the Ethernet frame, how the basic frame will look like. In this, we have Ethernet header, Ethernet data, and CRC. So this Ethernet header, it will consist of preamble, delimiter, destination address, source address, and the length. These are all, it is nothing but from which node you want to send the information and which node it receives the data and amount of the data you are sending it. So the length field, whatever it has, it consists of 2 bytes of data so that you can send 6553 bytes of data in the Ethernet data segment. But due to the limitation of Ethernet, we have only 1500 bytes to be sent. So this last byte is nothing but your CRC. It will calculate it as cyclic redundancy check. It will be calculated for the entire frame if suppose any error has occurred. The checksum is calculated. So this is how the entire Ethernet frame structure looks like. And the right side of the image, you can see that how the framing is happening from the master to slave using a Ethernet protocol. So in this, the master will be sending you the information related to node 2 data. This brief example. So that node 2 will access that information, and node 1 and node 3, node 4, these are all not a part of that information. So these 3 nodes, it will neglect that information, and node 2 will only process that data. So this is all about how Ethernet works. So every protocol will have some kind of a limitations in it. So we'll see how what are all the limitations of Ethernet. Next slide. So these are the few limitations of Ethernet. So here it is like bandwidth utilization. In the whenever you are trying to send a frame from the master to slave or master to other node, there it requires a minimum of 46 bytes to be transmitted. So where you are utilizing the bandwidth more bandwidth. So that at that case, if you want to send any 3 bytes or 4 bytes or less than 46 bytes of data, it is not possible to transmit. So we are using a bandwidth more so that it will reduce your performance. And also one more thing, stack delays. It as the protocol consists of some protocol stack for routing or IP transformation. So while switching, as the nodes increases between Ethernet communication, the processing between that nodes will take much time to process. So it will result in your stack delays, and also it will reduce your overall performance. So switch delays. Switch delays is where this Ethernet communication will happen over a switches, routers, or hubs. So while processing that information, if suppose you have sent some 1500 bytes of a data, then while processing that through switches, it should process. So from node to node, it will have some switches. So while processing that, it will take so much time to process it. So it will result in your switch delays. So to overcome all these limitations, and also there are few limitations which we can control in EtherCAT. So those are nothing but we can't able to predict the real-time applications also in this Ethernet protocol. And also one no kind of a acknowledgement will be getting in the Ethernet. So these are all the few limitations where we can overcome by using a protocol called EtherCAT. Next slide. So this is what is EtherCAT. So to avoid that kind of limitations, whatever we have observed, EtherCAT protocol was designed. So this protocol, it is open technology and it will uses the flexible topology where you can use whatever the topology you want. And also it addresses the most of the concerns, like it can be implemented using the hard real-time requirements within a deterministic response time. That means you'll be getting response time as accuracy. And this EtherCAT can be implemented with the low cost also. Hardware cost also, it will be very less. And after that, the protocol stack delays, whatever we have a limitation in the Ethernet, it can be overcome in the EtherCAT protocol. So it was developed by Beckhoff. So by keeping an industrial automation in mind. So in the image itself, you can see that this is part of Ethernet header. So EtherCAT embeds its payload onto the Ethernet frame itself, where it will differ only by the ether type. As you can see the ether type in the Ethernet header. So we can get able to know that it is a EtherCAT or Ethernet by using this ether type field. So the identifier which we have 0x88A4 is for EtherCAT. And this processing, in-depth working of this frame structure and all will be knowing in the further slides. Next slide. So this is what brief history of EtherCAT, how EtherCAT has evolved, and who has invented it. So in the 2003, Beckhoff has started a fast light bus system to correct some of the low bandwidth problems. So then they have resolved it, and it has led to the EtherCAT protocol. So in finally 2004, the ETG was created to promote that as the EtherCAT protocol. So this EtherCAT also was also published in IEC standards in 2005. So finally in 2007, this EtherCAT protocol, whatever it has developed, it has been integrated into the international standards called IEC 61158 and IEC 6187842. Next slide. So as we are communicating over a network, so we should have some kind of a standards to be followed, where we have EtherCAT OSA reference model. This is what how the master and slave communication will happen. So whenever you're trying to send some information between master and slave, it has to follow all this layer communication. So in this, EtherCAT will skip from the 3 to 6 layers. Why? Because in this, these are all like we are not using any IP related information. We are transmitting all the information with the help of MAC addresses. So this physical layer will give you all about the connectors, whatever you are using. It will be consisting of cables with RJ45 cables connectors, which is used for receiving and transmitting the data. And this data link layer, it will consist of 2 layers, where you have logical link control and MAC. So what does this logical link control will do? It will give you a path for the data onto the network. So this MAC layer, it will give you to communicate with the devices with the help of MAC device addressing. So by skipping this 3 to 6 layers, as per the survey, it was told that like it can achieve cycle times better than 100 microseconds. And also the communication jitter, whatever by using these layers, it was about less than 1 microsecond. Next layer. Next slide. So this is what one of the feature of EtherCAT. So EtherCAT is also well known for its feature called data on the fly. Why we call EtherCAT protocol as a data on the fly? So as you can see in the picture, the master will be sending the information to all the nodes with the single frame itself. So in this, the master, whatever the sending data, it will consist of all the slave related information, whether that particular slave is configured as an input or output. So while processing that data frame from master to slave, so the specific slave will have that input. Suppose if that slave is configured as an input, it takes the data from the frame or if that slave is configured as an output, it will fills the data into the frame. So it will process all the data whenever it is passing itself. So we can say that with the single frame itself, every node can able to fill and take the data. So here you can see this. It consists of Ethernet header and one or more datagrams. So this datagrams will let you know the master which kind of access it has to be done on the slaves. And also this here I can tell that as it is communicating over one single frame, there will not be any hardware any errors. So there, if any error occurred, it will be maximum due to the hardware propagation delays only. So that is why it is called as data on the fly, as it is sending and receiving the bytes on the fly itself. Next slide. So these are the few features how EtherCAT is well known for. So among them, good bandwidth utilization. It is nothing but where you will be utilizing the frame correctly. So as I said earlier, one single frame you are using for entire communication. So there you are as there is a limitation of using 46 bytes in Ethernet. In this EtherCAT protocol will not have that. Whatever the frame size it is there, it will be sending over the single frame from the master, so that the slave will fetch that data according to the specified data. So there we can say that it is using the bandwidth utilization is more, where your performance is also increased. And also it is famous for synchronization. Synchronization is nothing but whenever the nodes are communicating simultaneously, we need to have synchronization between them with better accuracy. So this is what best performance and also increased speed, as we are using the Cat6 and Cat7 cables. So it operates at the speed of 10 Mbps, so that you can have a very increased speed. So, and also when nodes are communicating simultaneously, we might have a problem of collision. Why? Because the one node data might be collided. So this also, that collision can also be avoided from by using this protocol. And also there is not much hardware required for implementing any slave device. So this distributed clock system, this we will be knowing in the next slides. Next slide. Distributed clock system is what one of the key feature of EtherCAT. In this, how the distributed clock system is operates. Let me give you an example of servo access. If it is communicating parallelly, like multiple servo access are communicating parallelly, so the master will not get to know like which servo access is working properly or not. So with the help of distributed clock system, we can have time latch for each slave system, so that what the slave will do is it will latches the timestamp at what time it has received the frame from the master, and also at what time it has sent the frame to other nodes. So it will latches all the values. So what does this master will do is it will collects all the latched value of each slave devices. If any error or miscommunication happen, the master can easily get to know by this distributed clock system. So how all these clock systems are defined? So basically we will be giving a reference clock to the first slave device, where it will be using as that clock. The same reference clock we will be using it to the others, all other slave devices also, so that they'll have time accuracy more. This is what all about distributed clock system. Next slide. So as every protocol have need to have some kind of a diagnostic functionalities. So if something there happen, any error or bit errors are there, or something error has happened, some diagnosis has to be taken care where we can have that diagnosis filled. So in this diagnosis tools, like we can have acyclic and cyclic. Cyclic is where you will be having process data monitoring. So it will be like the process data, whatever it is there. Cyclic process, it is nothing but the value you can't be modified within the system runtime. Whereas acyclic is the data related to somewhat vendor ID, manufacturing, all slave device related information. So here in this picture, you can see that the diagnostic functions, whatever we have, is divided between cyclic and acyclic. In the acyclic diagnostics, we have concept called working counter. So it consists in the frame itself. As I mentioned in the earlier, EtherCAT frame itself will consist of this working counter. So what does this working counter will do is it will enables the information from the datagram which need to be monitored consistently. So if suppose any device got addressed or that particular node memory got incremented, so then this working counter will get automatically incremented. So if the master will read that particular working counter value, so if it is matches with the value as expected by the master, then only it will proceed the application whole frame to the control application. Or else if that working counter value it is not matching with the value as expected, then it will discard that frame and the error, like at what state it has come, the fault has come, that status can be shown by the master. So that is all what about cyclic synchronous. So whereas coming into the acyclic, we have both hardware and software also. So in the hardware thing, if there is any lost link errors, like if suppose any path link has broken in between the nodes, so this we can have all these errors we can find from the acyclic information. So this state machine errors and diagnostic history object is also nothing but it is from the firmware where the state transitions are not expected as per the master. And also the objects dictionary, whatever it is there, it is not as per the expectation, then also it will throws you an error. So that master will give us a acknowledge that this fault has occurred. Next slide. So if we have a slave device, so in that slave device, what are all the errors we can diagnose? So in that, few of the errors are state machine error, link error, frame error, and synchronization error. State machine error, it is how the slave can be implemented in a states. So if suppose I want to have some kind of a operation in a slave, it has to follow some kind of state machine. So this state transition and all, it will be happen from the master. So if suppose any due to hardware delay or something happened, then the state transition is not per the expectation. So then it throws a state machine error. So that the master will get to know where and all, like which state it has been occurred, or what is the root cause for that. It will give you an report for that. And link error is like, as it is communicating over a network, we can't get to know where the particular link has broken. So to avoid this kind of errors, it is advisable to use Ethernet port that is connected to the last node of a network, so that it will be in a ring topology. The master will be knowing about the path failure and all. Next is frame error. So this frame error, where you will be having, like if suppose if there is any bit errors in the frame, so you'll not able to process that data. So ESC in each node, wherever, like ESC is nothing but EtherCAT slave controller. In each node checks the moving frame for errors with a checksum. So if there is any bit error counter will be incremented and all other nodes will be informed the same. So after this has occurred, the control unit, what it will do is it will detect that fault frame and will be able to process like where the fault has occurred and why it has occurred. So the master will be responsible to know all the errors or unexpected behavior from the slave by using the status and error information from the nodes. So this is what all about frame error. Synchronization error. It is like whenever the nodes are communicating simultaneously. So at the time of communication, there might be a synchronization error. It's like the time accuracy, whatever the nodes are communicating, that might not be accurate. That error also we can get to know with the help of synchronization error. Next slide. So this is what one of the key feature of EtherCAT, self-terminating technology. In this picture, you can see that master is able to send the information to the node 4. So if suppose I'll assume that between a node 4 and an EtherCAT master, there is no link between. So how does it will process is, this node 4 will receive all the frame from the master and it will process it and it will send back in the same way from the node 3, node 2, node 1 and to the master. That is what this is the key feature of EtherCAT, where we can have path failure, or if it is any link failure also, we can get to know with the help of self-terminating technology. Next slide. So in this, the host application and master application, it will be communicated with the help of dual port RAM. So where you will be accessing that registers from the master in the host controller. So sync manager is the concept where you want to protect the DP RAM while accessing it simultaneously. If suppose any master and slave is communicating simultaneously to the DP RAM, so there we should have some kind of a protection mechanism where it can't be accessed simultaneously. This synchronous manager will help you in that. So this, it can be operated in the two modes, mailbox mode and the buffer mode. So what does this mailbox mode does? So in this mailbox mode, whenever the sender is writing a value to a buffer, the receiver will not be able to perform any other operation. And at the same time, sender also, once the read or write operation is done only, then the sender can able to reinitiate the other operation. Until and unless the one operation is done from the master or sender, it is not advisable to switch for the another port, another mechanism. Next slide. So, and also in the buffered mode, sync manager in a buffered mode. So in this, what it will be happening is sender will be writing, you are updating the buffer continuously, whether it is like write or read. So what does this receiver will do is, receiver will get updated data into that. So once the buffer got filled, so if the sender is writing and continuously and the buffer got filled, the slave device will get the last entered data. Next slide. So this is how the network topology can be adopted to the EtherCAT protocol. So EtherCAT is flexible with whatever the topology we can have. So these are all the few topologies where we can have multiple combination. Either you can use bus and store, or multiple combinations you can use it. So you can see the picture that star topology is nothing but where you will be communicating to single hub, like all the nodes will be communicating to the single hub. Tree is where you maintaining hierarchical level of communication. So line communication is where the nodes will communicate serially. So bus is the bus communication will have all the nodes as a parallel communication. So this is like with the help of this, we can tell that EtherCAT can be adopted to any of the network topologies or by combination of topology also. Next slide. So these are all the few applications where we can see EtherCAT can be implemented. So it is mostly into the industrial applications and motion control, machine tools, plastic manufacturing equipment, semiconductor manufacturing machines, test benches, and whatnot. Many more, like where we can use EtherCAT for many applications. Next slide. So till now we have gone through that what is EtherCAT and how it is known, what are all its advantages. So here let me give you an overview of how the network architecture will look like. So here we have ESI file where this ESI file will be having all your slave device related information. So that it will consist of vendor ID, manufacturer ID, software revision, hardware revision, and how much distributed clock time is, synchronous manager. So it will consist all the device related information. So upon receiving the ESI from the vendor, so we will be feeding that to a configuration tool where this configuration tool will be creating a EtherCAT network information file. So this network information file, it will consist all the information about the networks, like how the node can be communicated and all. So it will be fed back to the master. So this master and slave communication will happen between, like, master will be sending some commands to access the slave information. So this is what all about how the network architecture looks like. From here, I'll be handing the session to Hemapriya.
Thank you, Navneeta. Hi all, this is Hemapriya. So firstly, we will start with EtherCAT Telegram. As already Navneeta said, EtherCAT uses the same Ethernet framing structure for communication. The only thing that varies is the data part of Ethernet frame is replaced with EtherCAT data. So EtherCAT frame starts with the EtherCAT header followed by EtherCAT datagrams. EtherCAT header again consists of length, which indicates the number of datagrams that are present in each frame. Then the next bit is a reserved bit, followed by a 1, which means the EtherCAT communication is happening in the Ethernet frame. Then coming to EtherCAT datagrams. The datagrams are again further split into datagram header, data, and working counter. In datagram header, the first part is command part, which indicates what kind of operation the master wants to perform with the slave device, like any increment or register read or some other operation. The next is index of the datagram. This is used by the master so that it can identify the datagrams. Followed by address. This is the address of the slave device. It can be position address or station address, broadcast address, or logical address. Out of this, position addressing is used before the slave device is recognized by the master. How it works is the master sets some negative value to the address so that whenever the frame passes through each slave device, the value will be incremented, and the slave which receives the value as 0 indicates it is addressed and it responds to the master. The address is also followed by an offset, which indicates on which register the specified operation that is in the command has to be performed. Then after address we have length, which indicates the number of data bytes that are being sent in the datagram. Then C indicates whether the datagram which has come is the circulating datagram or it haven't circulated. Then we have M, which indicates whether the datagram which is received currently is the last datagram or there are any datagrams preceding to this. Then the last part of datagram header is IRQ. It consists of logical or of all the events that are raised in the slave devices in the network. After datagram, then we have the data part, which holds the data, whether it is to be returned to the slave device or the slave writes to the data part so that the master will read it. Followed by data, we have a working counter, which is an error check. So how it works is, the master sends some value to the working counter, and when the datagram reaches the slave device, if the slave is addressed correctly and the specified operation in the command is performed correctly, then the working counter is incremented by 1. So that when the frame is received at the master end, it checks the working counter and it confirms whether the operation is performed successfully or not. Then after datagrams, we have a frame check sequence, which is CRC. This is same as Ethernet frame and it remains in EtherCAT frame also. After EtherCAT frame, we look into EtherCAT state machine. The EtherCAT has 4 fixed states and an operational state. Init, pre-operational, safe operational, and operational states are compulsory. Then bootstrap is an operational state. So each slave will require different set of setting information so that it switch from one state to other state. However, in all the slaves, when we power on or the device is set into reset, it goes to the init state. That is the first state of slave device. At the init state, the master tries to enable mailbox communication and it sends the settings required for that. So once mailbox communication is enabled, the slave switches to pre-operational state. In pre-operational state, then the master tries to start enabling the process data transfer, whereas synchronization mechanisms. By then slave switches to safe operational state, and while switching, it also checks whether the data transfer for inputs and also the synchronization mechanisms are successfully enabled by the slave. Once that is successfully enabled, then the master sends the output data to the slave device so that the slave moves to the operational state. This is the final running state of the slave device where all the communication like mailbox communication, input data and output data all are accessible by the master. Then we have a bootstrap state. This is an optional state and it is mainly used only when the slave firmware has to be upgraded. Now we will look into the mailbox communication protocols that are supported by EtherCAT. So first we have CAN over EtherCAT. If you look into the picture, the CAN state machine is almost similar to EtherCAT state machine. So the state machine can be easily mapped so that all the CAN open device profiles can be supported by EtherCAT. EtherCAT also provides some 8 constant PDO configurations so that cyclic data exchange can happen with the CAN. And for accessing other information, we need to use some asynchronous mechanisms. The advantage here is like CAN, EtherCAT doesn't have any 8-byte data limit so that any amount of data till the data length supported by Ethernet frame can be transmitted over the EtherCAT. Then we have a servo device profile over EtherCAT. As known, the Sarcos is the most commonly used device profile in motion control applications. This Sarcos profile can be used with EtherCAT by doing data mapping and also state machine mapping. So, to do in state machine mapping, the phases of Sarcos profile are mapped to the states of EtherCAT. Like the phase 0 and phase 1 of Sarcos are mapped to init state of EtherCAT, where the no communication is enabled with the master. Then in phase 2, the master just provides a handshake mechanism so that it is indicating the slave device to start the communication. Next, in phase operational state, where input data transfer and as well as synchronization mechanisms are enabled. Then, and finally, in phase 4 state, where the device is completely operational. Then, to access the service channels, drive parameters, and functions of the motion control device, EtherCAT mailbox mode can be used so that all real-time motion control data can be sent and received at very high speed. Then we have Ethernet over EtherCAT. Both Ethernet and EtherCAT use same cables for communication or connecting the devices. The thing is how Ethernet frames are sent via EtherCAT by using a switch port. The switch port induces the TCP/IP messages into the EtherCAT datagram so that they will be transmitted over the EtherCAT network. Other than TCP/IP, other Ethernet protocols like HTTP can also be used with EtherCAT. In this way, this EOE communication profile makes the EtherCAT slave device completely visible as an Ethernet device. And any web interfaces can also be used with EtherCAT. Then file access over EtherCAT. This is just some simple feature like a TFTP where we can have access for the files over EtherCAT network. The files can be read or some data can be written to files. This is mainly used for updating the firmware in EtherCAT network. Next, we will see how the firmware can be updated using FOE mailbox protocol. To do this, what master does is it first sets the slave device in bootstrap mode. Then the firmware file is sent by the master via FOE so that the slave device downloads the file, it verifies the file, and then it writes the file to the flash of the slave device. In case any error happened in this procedure, like either a reception of the file or verification and writing to the flash, the AL status codes are updated so that the master can know if any errors happened. If the writing to the flash is successful, then the master switches the slave from init state to bootstrap state. So that, bootstrap state to init state so that the device gets reset and it starts working with the updated firmware. And this feature is not mandatory in all the device profiles of EtherCAT, but it is compulsory if the device belongs to semi-device profile, that is the devices that are used in semiconductor manufacturing industries. So now we will see what and all the EtherCAT slave device will contain and what are the requirements to implement an EtherCAT slave device. Firstly, we will see what are the components of an EtherCAT slave device. First is a physical layer. In physical layer, the same RJ45 connectors are used to connect the EtherCAT devices and also the device to the master. The phi forms the physical layer of EtherCAT device. What it does is it just forwards the packets from EtherCAT network to the EtherCAT slave controller and the slave controller to the EtherCAT network. It has some functions and some mechanisms for doing this process. Then coming to a data link layer, the EtherCAT slave controller forms the data link layer part of slave. What it does is it receives the frame from the fly, it processes the frame and it extracts the data from the frame and sends it to the host controller using some PDI mechanism. Can be SPI or some digital IOs. In this way, this slave controller acts as an interface between the EtherCAT master and the slave's host controller. And then the slave data can be exchanged with the EtherCAT slave controller using this dual port RAM. Then application layer part of slave device, which is the host controller. This host controller consists of EtherCAT stack and also the device specific software. I mean, some specific applications like reading some sensor data or such applications. Then the slave stack code consists of EtherCAT state machine. Then if any mailbox protocols are supported, it consists of their stack. And then some any mechanism so that the data can be exchanged between the slave stack code and slave specific application. And the host controller itself consists of synchronous manager mechanisms also. Now we will see what are the requirements for slave development. So before starting the development of a slave device, we have to have the ETG membership. So to get this, the people have to log into ETG website and fill the form so that we can become the members of ETG, and they will provide us with a vendor ID. So we can use the same vendor ID in the slave that we are manufacturing. Then we require a CTT license so that the product we are developing, we can test it in-house before we are actually sending it for conformance testing at any test center. Then coming to bus interface, the standalone EtherCAT devices, they are connected between the network using normal LAN cables or optical cables. So such type of cables use media independent interface ports for as physical layer. So each EtherCAT slave device should have at least 2 media interface ports so that one can be connected to the master and the other can be connected to the next slave to form a network. Whereas in case of modular devices, they have a backbone connection. They use LVDS as internal physical layer. Then we see what are the requirements for EtherCAT slave controller. It can be either an ASIC or FPGA. In case of both, the functionalities remain same so that it is up to the user to choose. But in case of ASIC, we have to use an external EEPROM and the DRAM size will be limited to 64 KB. Whereas in FPGA, we will be having an internal EEPROM, and also FPGA will be preferred if there is no space to accommodate both ASIC and EEPROM on the hardware. Then the slave controller should also have an dual port RAM so that the cyclic and acyclic data can be exchanged between the host controller and the ESC. Slave controllers should also have a field bus memory management unit so that the data which is stored in the master with logical addressing has to be mapped to local physical address of the slave device. To do this, each cyclic input and output requires a dedicated FMU. Whereas if mailbox is supported, then it requires a separate field bus memory management unit. Then if the slave requires high precision synchronization between the slaves, then distributed clock mechanism has also to be supported by the EtherCAT slave controller. Then we require EEPROM. In case of ASIC, the EEPROM has to be mounted outside of EtherCAT slave controller and is communicated via I2C. Then we need to choose the host controller. This can be any controller of the user choice. Suppose the slave specific application is already running on a microcontroller, then the slave stack code can be ported to the same controller and the PDI mechanism can be established with the EtherCAT slave controller. The thing is, the slave stack occupies nearly 70 KB of memory. So keeping this in mind, any microcontroller of user choice can be selected for this. Then there are three types of synchronization mechanisms that can be established between slave and master. One is free run. That is independent of whether the EtherCAT communication is happening or not. The slave should be executing its functionality completely and it should be ready to process the EtherCAT frames whenever received. The next is on-frame reception. That is when EtherCAT frame is sent by the master, the slave controller processes it and it triggers the host controller so that it takes the data, performs the operation and send back to the slave controller. Then distributed clocks. These are used if high precision synchronization is required between the slaves. Till now we have seen what are the things to be considered to select a hardware. Now we see what are the tools that are required for slave development. We would require an XML editor to generate the ESI files. Then we require a configuration tool so that we load the ESI file and we generate an ENI file. Then we require a network monitor so that it analyzes the Ethernet frames when we are doing any development. We can use it so that we can fix any issues that are happening. Then we require a compliance test tool so that we can test our device in-house. Then we require a development IDE so that the slave specific application can be developed. This is a sample application which we are currently working on, where we are using SAM D51 as host controller and LAN 9253 as EtherCAT slave controller. And this ESC comes with an inbuilt file, so here we are not using an external file. It also has 3 ports and currently we are using 2 ports. And the LAN 9253 doesn't have an EEPROM, so we are using an external EEPROM and communicating to it using I2C. Then coming to EtherCAT testing and certification. As said, the CTT tool consists of inbuilt tests which are designed by the ETG so that we test our product in-house before sending it to ETG for certification. Then the steps involved for testing it at ETC are: first, we need to fill the conformance test form and send it to conformance@ethercat.org. So once they receive the form, they verify the details and give us a test date. So before the test date, we need to send the device and documentation to ETC. Then the conformance test, interoperability and physical layer tests are conducted. So then if all the tests are passed successfully at an ETC, then the pass notification is sent to the EtherCAT technology group, which issues a certificate that the device has been successfully certified to the device vendor. So with this, we have come to an end of the session. So now I will hand over the session to Jishan.
Thank you, Hema. I'm extremely apologize for the delay. We have been running short as well. So I would request the attendees to extend the webinar by 5 more minutes. We will take a couple of questions and conclude the session actually. So Hema and Navnita, you can pick few questions which we already have got, In case if you have any further questions, you can drop the your queries in your Q&A section there. Hello, Hema.
Yes, Jishan.
Yeah, please answer a few questions. Then we will conclude the session.
Okay.
And I request attendees, if you have any further questions, you can drop in here, or in case if you have further which you can you want to interact with us separately, you can send it us to email. You can email to us at contact@ruthango.com.
So firstly, I'll take a question of someone has asked. One second. So what is the difference between a stack delay and switch delay? So it is nothing but like here every protocol stack, it needs some of the every protocol which is used for routing or connection, whatever the connections we have, it requires some kind of additional overhead for each node. So where it will be creating further delays when we are running the stack. So this stack delay, it is nothing but it will be where we will be handling from the firmware part. Switch delay is what your hardware part. Like whenever you are trying to switch the communication between a nodes, through that switch, it will happen delay. This is what hardware delay is. And stack delay deals about your firmware runtime issues.
Yeah, one more question from Hema. Any question you want to pick up?
Question like, in addition to microchip, are there any EtherCAT slave controllers? Yes, we also use one controller from TI for our EtherCAT simulator. Do you have your own EtherCAT slave stack or do you use a third-party stack? So currently we are using the slave stack tool from Beckhoff to download the stack, and based on our requirement, we have some add-on features on that.
Thank you all for those webinar. We have some network issue, and the remaining questions will be answered over email. Thank you so much.